I drive 160 miles every other weekend just to pick up my daughter and drop her off.
Scotty Rasmussen, that he is not the father. The real reason Ms. Miller is denying you're Zaylee's father is because she hates you. And you're here today to prove you are Zaylee's father.
Your Honor, I believe it's just out of pure hatred. She just doesn't want me to have visitation. That's about 10,000 miles. That's wear and tear on my car. She doesn't have any way to meet me halfway. At the end of the relationship, when things got rocky, I'll admit it, I did go to another woman. That, it was my mistake.
Is that true, Ms. Miller?
No.
It's not?
No. Yes, I was very mad at him for being a cheater. He cheated on me through pretty much our whole relationship because I believe that the only reason why he wants the visitation is to claim her on his taxes.
I want my visitation because my daughter means the world to me. I want to be in her life as much as I possibly can.
In a courtroom where every heartbeat carries the weight of truth, Judge Lauren Lake reminds us of one unshakable reality. The truth changes everything. When love collides with law and DNA becomes the ultimate witness, no one leaves unchanged. This isn't just another paternity hearing. It's a story about how evidence shapes destiny, how justice balances heartbreak, and how people discover who they really are when the truth stands revealed. Every family carries secrets, but in Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, secrets are not meant to stay hidden. They're meant to be exposed under the bright light of truth. This case, where a man drives over 160 miles every other weekend to see a little girl he believes is his daughter, becomes a powerful reflection of how far people will go in the name of love, loyalty, and the search for justice. At the heart of this emotional storm stands a father figure, a man named Scotty Rasmussen, who believes he's doing everything right. He pays his child support. He travels miles to see his daughter, and he carries the weight of responsibility proudly. To him, this isn't just a legal obligation. It's a matter of fatherhood, sacrifice, and faith. But the law does not bend for feelings. It demands proof, and in Judge Lauren Lake's court, proof means one thing: DNA. Across the courtroom, Miss Miller stands determined. Her claim is unwavering. Scotty Rasmussen is not the father of her child, Zaylee. She insists that her child was conceived during a time when Rasmussen was away, that he simply could not be the biological father. What makes her argument more piercing is the emotional undertone, the betrayal, the resentment, the fragments of a relationship that ended not with closure, but with questions. And yet, as Judge Lake reminds us in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, justice isn't about revenge or resentment. It's about evidence. Every story has two sides, but the truth, that elusive, sometimes painful truth, lies somewhere between emotion and fact. As the case unfolds, the courtroom transforms into a stage of human vulnerability. Rasmussen's love for the little girl is undeniable. He speaks not like a man defending himself, but like a father trying to hold on to the only piece of family he has left. "She's my world," he says, and the courtroom falls silent. Those words are not about law. They're about the unspoken relationship between law and justice. How justice sometimes hurts those who love the hardest. Meanwhile, Miss Miller's testimony carries a different kind of pain. She feels wronged, cheated on, and disrespected. Her doubts about paternity are not just scientific. They're emotional scars turned into legal arguments. She claims that Rasmussen's only reason for wanting custody is financial, to claim her on his taxes. But Judge Lake, with her seasoned understanding of human conflict, doesn't let emotion cloud the facts. She looks beyond anger and defense. Because in her court, what matters isn't who speaks louder, but who brings evidence. This is where the evidence stage in divorce and paternity cases becomes more than legal procedure. It's the moment where human stories meet the cold precision of law. And when DNA testing enters the picture, everything changes. DNA, the silent microscopic truth teller, doesn't care about stories or memories. It doesn't sympathize or take sides. It just reveals. And in Judge Lauren Lake's words, from her Truth Changes Everything podcast, when the truth comes out, it doesn't destroy and it clarifies. In this case, however, the truth would break hearts before it could heal them. When the results arrive, the air in the courtroom is thick. This is more than a test result. It's a verdict on years of emotion, miles of travel, and countless moments of love. Judge Lake opens the envelope, her tone gentle yet firm, as if she already feels the weight of what's coming. The truth emerges with clinical finality. Mr. Rasmussen, you are not the father. The silence that follows is devastating. The man who drove hundreds of miles, who attended every doctor's appointment, who signed the birth certificate, who fought for visitation rights, suddenly finds himself erased from his own story. This is where people regret taking a DNA test, not because truth is wrong, but because truth is merciless. It doesn't negotiate with hope. It doesn't care about effort. It only separates fact from belief. Judge Lauren Lake sees the heartbreak in Rasmussen's eyes and the tension on Miller's face. She doesn't see villains, only broken people trying to survive the collision between love and law. And in that moment, she delivers one of her most powerful messages, a reflection that could belong in the archives of the Divorce Course podcast or Celebrate Recovery testimonies. This isn't a game. This is a child's life. And when truth enters the room, we have to make space for healing, not cheering. Because justice, as she knows too well, is not about winning. It's about restoration. Rasmussen weeps, not for pride, but for love. He doesn't argue, doesn't shout. His tears are quiet acknowledgements of a shattered reality. For years he was a father not because DNA said so, but because his heart did. He showed up when it mattered most. He fought not for money, but for meaning. And now, the system that once seemed to protect that meaning has taken it away with a single sentence. This moment represents one of the most painful truths in family law. That justice, even when right, can still feel wrong. It exposes the delicate balance between the concept of justice in jurisprudence and the raw, emotional nature of being human. Yet, amidst the heartbreak, Judge Lake reminds both parties, and all who watch, that the law cannot replace love, but it can redirect it. A child has the right to know their true parentage, not for the sake of blame, but for the sake of identity. The Supreme Court itself, in countless child support and adoption cases, has upheld that knowing the truth of one's biological roots is not just a right, it's a necessity for justice. And so, as the courtroom empties and tears fall quietly, Judge Lake's words echo like a closing argument for humanity itself. Justice isn't about who you love most, it's about who has the truth. This is the moment where adverse inference in evidence law meets the emotional complexity of family bonds. Because in every courtroom, when one parent hides the truth or delays it, the inference, the silent conclusion the law draws, often changes the entire outcome. In Miss Miller's case, her delay in revealing that another man could be the father caused years of confusion and pain. Judge Lake doesn't condemn her. Instead, she challenges her to confront the truth, not for herself, but for her daughter. Because truth isn't just evidence, it's legacy. And while Rasmussen's heartbreak paints one side of this legal tragedy, another layer of truth quietly emerges from similar stories across Lauren Lake's paternity court episodes. Stories of men who doubted and were proven right, women who believed and were proven wrong, and families who found closure not through winning, but through knowing. Every episode becomes a living chapter in the study of law, justice, and human redemption. It's where the relationship between law and justice unfolds in real time. One testimony, one DNA test, one truth at a time. Judge Lauren Lake doesn't just deliver verdicts. She delivers perspective. A reminder that the courtroom isn't just a place of law, it's a place of healing, accountability, and rebirth. Her words often resonate beyond the verdict, into podcasts, public talks, and countless lives that find courage in hearing others' truths. Because behind every file, every DNA swab, and every legal motion, there are stories of adoption, of cheating, of redemption, of regret, all converging on one universal theme. The truth will always find its way to the surface. The courtroom quiets again, but the air feels different now. What once began as a fight for truth has become a study in human nature, how love and justice often move in opposite directions. And as Judge Lauren Lake prepares for the next case, another story unfolds that will once again test the fragile balance between evidence, emotion, and the concept of justice in jurisprudence. This time, the story belongs to Clara Owens and Mr. Raines, two people bound by history, divided by doubt, and reunited in the pursuit of truth after 26 long years. It's a case that would fit perfectly in the Divorce Course podcast, because it carries every element of what makes relationships collapse and rebuild. Love, betrayal, separation, and finally, confrontation. Clara and Mr. Raines were young when their story began, a teenage romance that turned into a marriage too fragile to bear the weight of immaturity and mistrust. In those early days, love was loud, impulsive, and raw, but as Clara testifies before Judge Lake, that love quickly turned into chaos. She tells the courtroom how her husband cheated, lied, and left her to raise their daughter Jamie alone. To her, this wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the end of her belief in men, in promises, and perhaps even in herself. Mr. Raines, on the other hand, sees the past differently. His voice trembles not with guilt, but with frustration. He claims that Clara's timeline doesn't add up, that when she conceived Jamie, they were already separated, living in different counties. His defense isn't just about denying paternity, it's about defending his dignity, his truth. He insists that Clara named him as the father, only to save face. A phrase that Judge Lake immediately recognizes as both accusation and shield. This courtroom, under her leadership, becomes a place where the relationship between law and justice is constantly examined, redefined and humanized. Every testimony, every piece of evidence, and every tear becomes a part of a larger philosophical question. What is justice, really? Is it the pursuit of truth or the restoration of peace? Clara and Raines' arguments circle around one another like emotional echoes from a past neither can fully let go of. The evidence stage begins when Judge Lake requests the calendar timeline Raines submitted. The same type of evidence that so often determines the course of family law. It's a simple piece of paper, marked with dates and calculations, but it carries the weight of decades. Each month represents a memory, each day a potential moment of conception, and every red circle, a question that could change a life. Raines argues that Clara was already pregnant when he left her. Clara insists the opposite. That conception happened later, after he was gone. The adverse inference principle looms quietly in the background. The idea that withholding truth, even unintentionally, allows the law to draw its own conclusions. Judge Lake studies the evidence, but she doesn't rush. She knows that truth is not just about proof, it's about purpose. And sometimes, people hide the truth not out of deceit, but out of pain. As Clara's voice cracks, the courtroom glimpses the layers beneath her anger. She isn't just defending her version of events, she's protecting the story she's told herself for 26 years. To admit uncertainty now would mean unraveling a lifetime of emotion. To her, doubt feels like betrayal all over again. But in Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, doubt isn't the enemy. Denial is. Through calm questions and steady reasoning, Judge Lake reminds both parties that the courtroom isn't a battlefield. It's a bridge. It's where people can finally confront the truths they've run from. And for Clara, that truth is that her daughter, Jamie, deserves to know. No matter how painful it may be, Jamie, now 26, sits quietly between her parents, her expression a mixture of hope and exhaustion. For her, this isn't about money, pride, or reputation. It's about identity. She says, softly, "I've had several people tell me he might not be my father." It's a line that resonates with thousands who've lived through similar adoption stories or DNA test cheating stories, where the truth becomes both a wound and a cure. In this moment, Judge Lake's compassion rises above her authority. She sees a young woman torn between two versions of herself, one built on what she was told, and one built on what she's about to learn. The courtroom becomes silent once again as the DNA results are handed over. Just like before, the envelope carries more than paper. It carries finality. Judge Lake's voice lowers, deliberate, measured. A sound that bridges fear and relief. When it comes to 26-year-old Jamie Rowe, she reads, "It has been determined by this court, Mr. Raines, you are the father." The words land like thunder and sunlight at the same time. Clara gasps. Jamie's eyes fill with tears. Not from shock, but from release. And Raines, the man who doubted, the man who fought, the man who claimed he wasn't sure, suddenly breaks down. His defenses crumble, replaced by a single trembling request. "Can I hug her?" It's in this moment that Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom transcends law. The Evidence Act, the timelines, the calculations, they all fall away, replaced by something that feels older and greater than jurisprudence itself. Forgiveness. What began as a legal battle ends as a testimony, a living celebrate recovery story, where healing doesn't come from victory, but from vulnerability. For Judge Lake, this is what the concept of justice in jurisprudence truly means. Not punishment, not exposure, but alignment, bringing truth, law, and emotion into harmony. And it's here that her philosophy echoes what she's often shared in her Truth Changes Everything podcast, that truth, when faced bravely, can restore what life once broke. In both cases, Rasmussen's heartbreak and Raines' redemption, truth served as the ultimate equalizer. It didn't choose sides, it simply revealed. In one story, truth ended a bond. In another, it created one. This is the paradox that Judge Lake navigates with grace. She understands that DNA tests do more than solve disputes. They reveal character. They show who fights for love, even when love doesn't belong to them, and who hides from truth, even when truth could set them free. When people say DNA tests change everything, they often mean the results. But Judge Lauren Lake knows the change begins much earlier, in the courage to ask the question. The courtroom has seen countless versions of these stories. Men who swore they weren't fathers only to find redemption in fatherhood. Women who carried doubts for years, finally setting themselves free by admitting them. Each case becomes a mirror, reflecting society's most complicated questions about family, loyalty, and truth. Through every emotional breakdown, every piece of evidence, every legal argument, one message always shines through. Truth is not the enemy of love. It's its foundation, and perhaps that's why her courtroom continues to inspire the Game-Changing Attorney podcast and the Divorce Course podcast alike. Because in both law and life, the line between right and wrong is rarely clean. What matters more is integrity, the willingness to face the truth, even when it hurts. Clara, now trembling but calm, whispers something that captures the essence of this realization. "I wish my daughter had a father who loved her the way my father loved me." It's not an admission of guilt. It's a cry for understanding. And Raines, without hesitation, answers, "I tried to be that father. I wish I'd fought harder." In that instant, Judge Lake sees not a defendant and a plaintiff, but two broken souls finally ready to heal. She nods, letting the silence speak, knowing that some verdicts don't need to be spoken. The truth has already done the work. When Jamie steps forward to embrace her father, the courtroom erupts. Not in applause, but in catharsis. It's the kind of moment that reminds us why law must always serve humanity, not the other way around. Because justice without empathy is mechanical, but justice guided by compassion, that's divine. And this is the essence of Lauren Lake's legacy. Her courtroom is not about shaming people with evidence, it's about freeing them with truth. Whether it's DNA test people who regret taking them, or families torn apart by lies, her message remains steady. The truth doesn't break you, it builds you. In every full episode, her words echo beyond the screen. She turns every case into a lesson about accountability, identity, forgiveness, and faith. She reminds viewers that law is not a weapon, but a tool, meant to serve justice, not ego. When she adjourns this final case, her tone carries warmth and resolve. She reminds Clara that her daughter now knows the truth, and that knowledge is her inheritance, something far greater than money or legacy. She reminds Mr. Raines that being a father isn't defined by time lost, but by love reclaimed. And she reminds Jamie that knowing her truth is the beginning of her healing, not the end of her story. As the camera fades, one quote lingers, a line that could be etched on every courtroom wall in the nation. The law can determine the father, but only love can make one. And in that sentence, Judge Lauren Lake captures everything her courtroom stands for: truth, justice, love, and the eternal human need for belonging. Because in the end, these are not just paternity cases. They are stories of the human condition. Stories of people searching not just for answers, but for peace. And through every test, every tear, and every revelation, one truth remains. The truth changes everything. When Judge Lauren Lake closes her courtroom doors at the end of the day, the echoes of truth don't stop at the bench. They ripple outward, through homes, podcasts, and hearts, reminding us that justice isn't just a legal term, it's an experience. It's what happens when evidence meets emotion, when courage replaces fear, and when ordinary people find themselves standing face to face with the truth they spent years avoiding. The stories of Rasmussen and Miller and Owens and Raines aren't isolated cases. They're reflections of the human journey, of how we wrestle with love, trust, and the consequences of our choices. Judge Lake doesn't just preside over paternity disputes. She presides over human truth. Every case that unfolds in her courtroom becomes a mirror held up to society, asking us not who's guilty, but who's honest. In the aftermath of Rasmussen's heartbreak, Judge Lake's words continue to resonate. This is not a sport. This is a child's life. It's a sentiment that cuts through the noise of blame and resentment. When Miller cheered at the revelation that Rasmussen was not the father, it exposed something deeper, how pain can disguise itself as victory. Judge Lake's reprimand wasn't just judicial, it was moral. She reminded everyone that truth is sacred, even when it shatters comfort. And so, in that moment, the courtroom becomes a sanctuary, not of punishment, but of accountability and healing. Because in Judge Lake's philosophy, truth without compassion is cruelty, and compassion without truth is weakness. Justice requires both. That's the thread connecting every case, every testimony, and every heartbreak. Whether it's a DNA test that destroys an illusion, or one that restores a family, the underlying principle is the same. Truth changes everything. The weight of evidence and the burden of hearts. For Judge Lake, the evidence stage in divorce and custody cases isn't just about presenting documents or timelines. It's about understanding the why behind the evidence, the emotions that led to deception, the fear that drove silence, the love that lingered despite betrayal. Every parent who steps into her courtroom carries a story. Some carry proof, birth certificates, receipts, photos. Others carry pain, the invisible kind that doesn't fit neatly into a file. But the law requires more than tears. It requires truth supported by evidence. That's where the relationship between law and justice becomes painfully real. The law measures what is. Justice considers what should be. The law declares, "You are not the father." Justice whispers, "But you were still the parent." In this delicate balance lies the heart of jurisprudence. The concept of justice isn't defined by cold logic alone. It's defined by humanity. In her years of hearing cases, Judge Lauren Lake has seen people hide behind anger when what they truly feel is grief. She's seen mothers who fear losing control, fathers who fear losing love, and children who fear losing both. And through it all, she has maintained one sacred belief. Truth is not the enemy of love. It is its proof. It's why her courtroom feels different. It's not just a place of verdicts. It's a place of emotional recovery, not unlike the powerful celebrate recovery testimonies shared by people who have faced their past and found redemption in honesty. When a mother admits she lied, or a father confesses his fear, That's when healing begins. Because truth doesn't only expose, it rebuilds. Podcasts of Truth, where law meets life. Judge Lake's influence extends far beyond the wooden walls of her courtroom. Through the Truth Changes Everything podcast, she explores what these moments mean, not just legally, but spiritually and psychologically. She talks about how every case, no matter how ordinary, asks a bigger question. Can truth and love coexist after betrayal? And the answer, she insists, is yes, if we let them. Similarly, episodes from the Divorce Course podcast dissect how the legal dissolution of marriage isn't the end of love's story. It's often the beginning of honesty. Because in divorce, as in paternity, the greatest evidence isn't on paper, it's in behavior. The willingness to own mistakes becomes the truest testimony of all. Even the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, often focused on legal brilliance, celebrates Judge Lake's ability to humanize the courtroom. She turns law into empathy, showing that justice isn't about defeating the other side, but discovering the truth together. In one episode, she reflects on how DNA tests have become both a miracle and a mirror. They reveal what's real, but also expose what was missing. Some people regret taking a DNA test not because of the result, but because it forced them to face the version of themselves that lied, doubted, or hid. People don't fear DNA, she says in one powerful segment.